Today in the Garden Home, we're taking a look at lifestyle, from quirky garden art to activities you can enjoy with your family. It's all coming up right after this. Over the past 20 years as a garden designer, I've enjoyed helping homeowners create private sanctuaries full of beauty and wonder. I find each garden to be a fresh opportunity to explore ways to create uniquely personal spaces. These are just a few of the gardens I've helped to transform into garden homes. Hi, I'm Alan Smith. Welcome to the Garden Home. We're out here on my loggia covered breezeway. I'm setting up for a little entertaining for late summer. Now, the way I see it, having friends and family over is a great way to spend quality time in the garden. You see, the whole garden home concept is about blurring the lines between inside and out. And the way I see it, when you embrace the spirit of outdoor entertaining, well, you've tapped into the whole garden home lifestyle. And in today's show, we're going to take a look at some creative and interesting ways people have found to make their outdoor living space part of their everyday lives. So let's get started with a visit to a colorful garden that has some special outdoor living features. Barbara Pryor is an artist and interior designer whose home is surrounded by a wooded lot that screens the view of a busy highway below. She and her husband, a retired U.S. Senator, enjoy using the garden rooms around their home for entertaining and relaxing.
The interior-exterior idea started when we bought this house. It was also perfect inside that I turned my attention to the gardens because they had never really been cultivated. When you looked outside, you didn't really see anything but trees, which was a wonderful thing, but we decided to have various rooms that have furniture and sculpture and candles and tables and chairs to make people want to go outside as well as be inside. One of the first things we did was change the door because it was just a plain old brown door. And my grandchildren and I decided to paint it, and then they helped me make the Moroccan designs, and they loved hammering in all of these nails. The door knocker is from China, and so it's all a big mix. In any case, we hope that it's very welcoming. My husband came home from work, and there was just a piece of visqueen over the door, and he came in and he said, "Somebody's taken our front door." Of course, it was in the garage, and the children and I were beating it up and painting it. It was really, really a great experience. They loved it. The garden house started with a fish, a Chinese fish, which is on the roof, and it's really 8 feet long. It doesn't look that big from there. But I decided that as long as I had the fish, then I had to have a house for it to go on. The fish house was so bright that I felt like the things that were with it also needed to be very brightly colored. Things like old shutters from New Orleans and capital carvings that went under roofs and stained glass doors and, of course, endless blue bottles. At the same time, I didn't want to lose the natural beauty of those dry stacked walls, and so I wanted the space itself to show, but of course the fish house is kind of the crowning touch up there. This is the final thing that we've added here as a focal point, and this Buddha is from China. And during our travels, we noticed when we visited temples in India and other places that they always brought fresh flowers to the Buddha or fresh fruit. And so we try to keep fresh flowers from the garden here to honor the Buddha. I always encourage everyone to use lots of color in their houses, on their walls, outdoors, wherever, because I think it's very uplifting.
I think it's interesting to note that Barbara took inspiration for some of her garden's art from her childhood, in particular the bottle tree.
The first thing that went into the garden was a bottle tree. And so that was the beginning of the whole concept of the gardens. And it seems like everything that was done went with the bottle tree. One of my earliest memories is playing with colored glass that my grandmother saved for me when we would visit her in the summertime. I would play with them for hours in the dirt, rearranging. She also had the first bottle tree that I ever saw. So for years I have collected blue bottles.
To learn more about the tradition of using bottle trees in the landscape, we turn to my gardening buddy, Felder Rushing, in his eclectic garden in Jackson, Mississippi.
Historically, bottle trees go back to Africa when there was this idea that bottles put out in the landscape would attract bad spirits at night and trap them, and in the morning the sunshine would destroy them. A lot of people really aren't into bad spirits and all that, but it's just like when people sneeze and other people say, "God bless you." That's because of evil spirits, or so people think. Anyway, bottle trees were brought over to America as talisman against spirits. People who have bottle trees look for bottles anywhere we can get them, and the hardest to find are blue. I mean, really hard to find is a real red bottle, but blue bottles are they're the most popular for bottle trees. And there's real fancy wines. There's bottled water that you'll pay like $8 a bottle for. There's a lot of people will buy a certain beverage just because it's in a blue bottle. Whether they use the beverage or not, who cares? But blue is hard to come by, and usually people get one at a time, and I can look at all the ones in my yard and tell you pretty much where they all came from. Well, I've got the kind of peripheral vision that trashy people have. You know, gardeners are always looking for bowling balls and accessories, so anything that's colorful, that catches a little sunshine and reflects it, whether it's a gazing ball or a bottle tree or a mirror or anything like that, catches my eye. To me, a bottle tree that's really good is one that's homemade. They got an old Christmas tree with the limbs bobbed back and bottles stuck on it, or maybe some crepe myrtle branches or a dead cedar tree. Instead of cutting it down, they just hang bottles or stick bottles over the branches. And I've seen them done both ways, either bottles full of colored water hanging in the trees, or else most commonly just the branches cut back to about finger size and different colored bottles set on them. Most people like really, really colorful kinds with all different kind of bottles, sort of like a kaleidoscope having a stroke, okay? But I like solid blue. One of my favorite bottle trees has got just green and clear bottles. It's not very showy, but it sparkles and it brings a little color to the garden, and it captures my imagination. The researchers at the Center for the Study of Southern History at University of Mississippi say that they've been called poor man's stained glass, and that works for me. Some people hang things out of holes in the ears. The rest of us just put things in our yard. It's pretty little reflective garden accessories, and it works.
You know, I have to say, one of the things that I really love about Felder and Barbara's gardens is that they've taken unique pieces that they've created themselves and integrated in their landscape. Many of us, I think, are afraid to go out and paint something or create something and put it on display. We don't feel like, for some reason, it just doesn't quite come up to standard. Several years ago, we created some very unique stepping stones. They'll dry and they'll curl up. That's really pretty simple, and it starts by going on a scavenger hunt in a garden or around your neighborhood and collecting a few things like rocks and leaves. You could even use seashells, broken terracotta pots or tiles. All of these things will make great imprints for your design. We started by putting together a frame with 4 pieces of 2x4 lumber. You can make the stepping stone any size you like. We put them together with nails and set them on a bed of sand. Now for the fun part. John's placing all of the objects he found in the garden to create his own design. Now, if you use leaves, it's important to go for those that have bold textural patterns and strong veining. These seem to show up better. You'll find that 1/3 of a bag of ready-mix concrete will make a stone this size, which is 12 by 18 inches. That's looking great, John.
Thanks.
With the concrete mixed, John's putting the final touches on his design, and now we're ready to fill the frame. Now, John, just take this trowel and smooth it out, just as smooth as you can, kind of like putting icing on a cake. With the concrete smooth, John will sign and date the back of the stone, and we'll let it set for a couple of days. Remove the frame, wash away the sand, and reveal the imprints or fossils. Creating a piece of garden ornament like the stepping stone is a great way to get kids involved in gardening. Once they've completed the project, they're so proud of it. It's a little piece of art. You know, I have friends who have similar pride in the lawns they keep. Throughout the growing season, they love to create the perfect lush lawn. Now for me, I'm into a more integrated approach. I love the flowers as much as I love the lawn. Together, they make a beautiful picture. But now lawns are important, and they've been a family gathering place for years. I mean, who among us hasn't enjoyed a barbecue outdoors under a big shade tree? So what do you figure goes into creating a great lawn? Well, it starts with the soil. You'll want to get rid of the rocks and weeds and break up clumps. And you can do this by tilling and raking. Now for an instant look, there's always sod, but believe me, they're not giving this stuff away at the turf farm. So you may prefer this method. It's hydroseeding, and I use it on many projects, particularly when I have a large area to cover. Now, Charlie, how long has this approach to seeding large areas been around?
Hydroseeding started about 50 years ago. It was mostly used on multi-acre highway commercial type properties, but in the last 2 or 3 decades, machines have gotten smaller, technology's gotten better, and we're able to come in and do individual home lawns now with this technology.
Well, it seems like a very efficient way to establish a lawn, or in this case, we're doing lawn and wildflower meadow.
Right, it's very efficient, it's very fast, it's extremely cost effective.
Of course, once you get your lawn established, you'll be faced with maintenance, and the cost of watering and caring for a lawn can be staggering. Here are a few tips that may help you bring your lawn through the summer. When mowing, leave the blades of your grass slightly longer by just a couple of inches. This will help shade the roots and reduce moisture evaporation from the soil, so raise the blade on your lawnmower. Next, it's best to water in the early morning, very early, like at 5 a.m. This gives the lawn an opportunity to dry before nightfall, a time when types of fungus are most active. This is also usually a non-peak time for most communities' water supply. It's also much better to water thoroughly only a couple of times a week than to water lightly more often. You see, deep soaking encourages deep root growth, whereas light watering encourages the roots to stay close to the surface of the soil, making your lawn more susceptible to heat and drought. Another thing to keep in mind is an actively growing lawn this time of year will require about 1 inch to 1.5 inches of water per week. This, of course, will depend on your soil type. When it comes to feeding, I think fertilizing once, maybe twice over the entire growing season is plenty. You see, the more you fertilize, the more you're going to have to take care of. A lawn can be a source of pride. Just don't let the summer heat get the most of it and you. As I've traveled around the country, I've seen all kinds of ways people use their lawns, like the Barnes Garden in Natchez, Mississippi, where winters are so mild their grandkids can play croquet. That's quite a contrast to this hot summer day in Rosemary Beach, Florida, where a pickup game of croquet entertained a group of kids for hours. Whether a planned get-together or a spur-of-the-moment glass of wine with friends, the garden is a great place for people to gather. I designed a garden for a couple who live along the banks of a river. They enjoy entertaining and came up with a fun way to celebrate the bloom of a particular plant in their garden. They have a martini party out on their lawn.
What we're celebrating this afternoon is the blooming of the Cyanthus retusus tree, which is the Chinese fringe tree. We ended up with this species of fringe tree by accident, and it's been such a stellar specimen that we wanted to celebrate it in some way. And martinis at the time were very in vogue, and we said, come have a martini and see the fringe tree. It's usually the first time the garden looks decent after the winter, and we're delighted to have our friends come in and join with us. I think the party has in some way encouraged other people to open up their gardens and use it as another garden room to talk about to have their friends in and to entertain outside or entertain on their deck where their garden is, and to share that. And it sort of extends the season. To have some vehicle to have a party and to share your garden with your friend, and whether it's the blooming of a rose bush or whether it's the blooming of a fringe tree or the first morning glories, it's just fun to have some event that people participate in and come and join you in your garden.
I don't know about you, but my garden has become a lot more about my pets lately, especially since last year when a mama cat came along and had kittens in the garden, this being one of them, Roscoe. Now, who could resist a face like this? Now he's a permanent fixture around here. But just a side note to this story, I had them fixed at the appropriate time so they cannot contribute to the ever-growing pet population. Now, Roscoe and his siblings are pretty street smart. I have to say they much prefer chasing rodents away from the chicken coop than messing around in the flower beds, which suits me just fine. Over the years, many of you have asked me questions about what plants are potentially hazardous to our pets. Well, since we're on the subject of outdoor entertaining with family and friends, I thought we'd touch on making our gardens safe for pets. After all, they're members of the family as well. Certain animal species have a vulnerability to potentially poisonous plants, so we need to be aware of what plants can be harmful. For instance, the house plant aloe is one of them. It may soothe burns, but it's not for your felines, so keep this one out of their reach. And when it comes to the bird of paradise, well, this bird is not one for your cats. Definitely try to keep it away from them. During the holidays, you may think that poinsettias are the only plant you need to keep an eye on around children and pets, but the amaryllis can be hazardous as well. And foxglove. It may sound animal friendly, but it really isn't. You see, the leaves of digitalis can be deadly if too much of the plant is ingested. If you're like me, larkspur is one of your favorite wildflowers. It's so appealing to the eye. But as a seedling, this plant bears a potential problem for any curious little critter. And morning glories are truly a beautiful flower, but don't let your furry friends start digging and get a hold of any of these seeds or roots. They're potentially poisonous. And one more tip. You can prevent your animals from chewing on plants by misting the leaves with pepper spray. For a list of potentially dangerous plants to your animals, log on to my website. That's pallansmith.com. Now, while we're on the subject of pets, you might think that feeding the birds is a big no-no with cats around. But there are a few things to keep in mind so that both feline and feathered friend can live in harmony. Birds are most active at dusk and dawn, so you might want to keep your cats indoors during these times. A well-fed cat is less likely to hunt and will stay close to home. But even the best cats can get into mischief, so don't put feeders near your cat's favorite place to catch a nap. Like they say, out of sight, out of mind. Now, anytime's a good time to begin feeding the birds, but winter is when birds may struggle to find sufficient nutrient. And it's important to keep in mind that during the late winter, birds are storing extra fat reserves for the spring nesting season. At the end of winter, with the onset of spring, one of the biggest challenges I face in my garden is keeping my bird feeders full of seed. There's no doubt that supplementing wild birds' natural diets helps them make it through the winter. You see, during the winter months, birds are vulnerable to disease due to stress from weather conditions and fewer food sources. You may have observed overcrowding at your feeder. Multiple feeding stations in different areas of your yard will help disperse the bird activity. Or you can do what I'm doing here, and that's move your feeders around periodically. You see, this will keep the concentration of droppings at the lowest. You see, these droppings can be a possible source of disease. Now, if you find a dead or diseased bird around your feeders, one not killed by a predator, you may want to disinfect your feeders weekly. You can do this by simply soaking them for 3 to 4 minutes in a solution of 1 part household bleach to 9 parts water. You can also keep birds safe from predators as they feed. Studies reveal that more wild birds are killed by domestic cats than disease. A single cat can kill up to 100 small mammals and birds each year. So if you have a cat, you might give the birds a chance by hanging a bell on the cat, or at least hang your feeders 10 to 12 feet away from cover so they can at least see a predator coming while they're feeding. If mosquitoes are a nuisance to us, then why wouldn't they annoy our pets? Periodically, you should go through your garden and look for sources of standing water. You see, mosquitoes require water to reproduce. I have to say, my favorite time to entertain in the garden is at dusk. The light quality, well, you just can't beat it. And then when you accent it with lighted candles like this, as you can see, these are all displayed in a basket. It really sets the garden off. I better get going because I have guests coming soon. I don't know about you, but for me, the biggest deterrent for me entertaining outdoors is that I don't have the time. So I'll let you in on a little secret. I like to use a local gourmet shop to help me out from time to time. There, I can get gourmet fresh food without it coming from my kitchen. It may cost a little more, but it saves a lot of time. And after all, time is the most precious resource. I'm really fortunate to have one of these shops nearby. Let's stop into Boulevard Bread Company for some ideas on what to serve at my late summer get-together.
Typically, when you're doing a party, you go to the market and just throw something together or go grab a cheese platter. But to do something really special, it's great to come into a gourmet shop who does really incredible fresh deli. I love potato salad, and although potato salad is something very simple, you can put a little twist on it and make it something exceptional. I love it with Belgian endive, asparagus, really good creamy potatoes, and a little bit of dill sauce, almost a German-style potato salad. Instead of getting a real simple cheddar or something from the grocery store, I love something unique like Greek halloumi. It's incredible grilling cheese made from cow's and goat's milk. It's amazing on roasted fresh bell peppers with a little good olive oil and oregano. It's absolutely fantastic. This particular salad is nice to do actually when tomatoes aren't in the peak of season. When you're craving tomatoes, you can buy some tomatoes that aren't necessarily ideal, and by drying them out in the oven, it intensifies the flavors. So this is a salad that you could really do year-round. In the summertime, you may not want to oven dry the tomatoes because they may be delicious just as is. In this particular case, we're dressing it with a beautiful Italian salsa verde, which is finely chopped minced parsley and good olive oil and capers, and then a little shaved Parmigiano Reggiano. Another idea is a wilted spinach salad. You take really good baby spinach and a little warm mustardy vinaigrette with pancetta, which is Italian-style bacon, and then also a little sieved egg is really nice over that. The sieved egg on the spinach salad is called a mimosa, and it's yellow like the mimosa flower. All of these salads can sit out for a few hours, and in many cases they improve as they sit out, as the flavors marry together, as they warm up. One of the fastest things is all these little gourmet delis across the country are making incredible dips, little oven-dried tomato relishes and hummus and little spinach and artichoke dips, things you can pick up and throw on the table and add a little pizzazz. If you want to give it a go yourself, of course, the best place to start is your own backyard if you have a garden, or the farmer's market, of course. Buy the most incredible seasonal vegetables you can find and treat them simply. A lot of times, if you're in a pinch and you want an instant party, it's great to call your local deli or gourmet shop. All these are fast, fun, simple ideas that you can go pick up from your local gourmet shop, throw on your table, and make your guests feel special, like you've been working all day in the kitchen.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's show. I'm really happy you tuned in, and I hope you picked up some tips on how to expand your outdoor living space, as well as some tips on how to make your garden more comfortable for your family, friends, and pets. Until next time, from the Garden Home, I'm Alan Smith.